Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to kick this one off now, just because I think we've got most of the people here. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this one. Really looking forward to this session with Farm Urban. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. First off, just to let you all know, this session is being recorded. You'll all get a copy of it after we sort of complete, just so you can watch it back or share it with anyone. But just to make everyone aware, just give a quick outline of like how this is all going to work, really. So just after I set the scene, I'm going to hand over to Paul from Farm Urban. He's going to have maybe like a 45-minute sort of session, just sort of talking you through what he does, giving you a bit of background. And then at the end, there's the opportunity for a Q&A session. The way that will work, just because obviously there's so many of us on there, if you have a question, if you'd like to just raise your hand, we'll read out your name, unmute your mic, and if you can unmute it as well yourself, then you should be able to ask your question. Just introduce myself, really. I think most of you I've spoken to most of you. I'm Jack. I'm the sort of social value advisor for PPF. So just to join the dots, really, of how this has all sort of come about. So as you know, our main thing is procuring contractors for the public sector, and a massive part of that is social value add. In particular, we've got like a commitment where all of our projects have to meet 12%. So we're always looking for sort of new ways, new innovations of how that might be done, and that's where Farm Urban comes in. So Farm Urban are also Liverpool-based. They're focused on sustainability. I won't sort of give too much away because I'm sure Paul's got plenty of information for you. But their sort of focus is about making towns, cities, companies greener and healthier. There's some really exciting ways they do that. So what we wanted to do is just arrange this as a chance for Farm Urban to share some of their knowledge, how you might be able to get involved, and just a couple of pictures of what best practice might look like. Without further ado, I'm just going to hand this over to Paul, who's their managing director, to introduce himself and sort of talk you through everything.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen so we can all have a look. So, yeah, hopefully you can all see a peach screen that's popped up there with the Farm Urban brand. So my name's Paul Myers. I'm the MD and one of the co-founders at Farm Urban. Yeah, thanks for the invitation to come and speak today. What we're hoping to do is kind of tell you a little bit about our business, but then also kind of share some insights and some thoughts that we've had around social value as we've sort of been operating in this space over the last 10 years. And then what I'm really keen to do is kind of open that up to some conversation and some questions at the end. So Farm Urban was set up 10 years ago. We kind of unofficially span out the University of Liverpool, really with this sort of overarching thesis that we're on the brink of a human-led transformation to a more sustainable future. And the hope is that by 2050, our towns and cities will have become greener, healthier, and more inclusive. So that was the ambition, to try and help move from the image on the left to the image on the right. And clearly there's a lot of the built environments that needs to change, but then also kind of what's going on in hospitals, in schools, in homes, in businesses. Also, we felt like we wanted to kind of try and nudge towards healthier and more sustainable behaviours as well. So we do a lot of different things at Farm Urban, and I'll kind of share a bit more detail on that later. But really, we're united by this mission to transform our cities, towns, and organisations into greener, healthier, more inclusive places. So we are a social enterprise, so kind of social value, social impact. It's in our DNA. It's why we exist. And, it's what we've kind of been practicing for the last 10 years. But I suppose we didn't really understand or know this term social value up until about 4 or 5 years ago, when we started to get introduced into the construction industry and kind of public sector procurement, and really started to understand that there's an awful lot happening in this space, and then the construction industry and associated businesses are delivering a lot of social impact. So it kind of led us to look at things through a slightly different lens and start to think about how can we form really strategic partnerships to kind of amplify our impact and help and support businesses within that sector kind of deliver on their social impact and social value. So I'm sure everyone here knows what social value is, but I quite like this diagram. There's loads of different ones out there. This one's from etymology, and it talks about, community, so engaging and consulting the community, delivering social value through your design practice. So whether that's where you're sourcing materials, how you're engaging with the public, supply chain, so ensuring that there's ethical and responsible procurement throughout the supply chain, skills, so thinking about kind of how we're upskilling, educating, or reskilling a workforce within the delivery of schemes. Employment, so again, linked to that skills basis, are we recruiting from a diverse group? Are we recruiting locally if possible? Are there any opportunities and gaps within employment that we can help to fulfill? And then environment, so looking at material reuse, reducing waste, reducing emissions, and then thinking about the whole asset. So not just the kind of our particular part, whichever business you're from, but how do we think about this whole asset and deliver social value, right the way through, and ensure that social value is kind of embedded within that asset over the whole life of the delivery of the scheme, but also moving forward. And then kind of finally this sentiment, so that the public feel engaged and they feel like it's an asset that's delivered with social value at its core that kind of benefits and impacts them. So I mean, all of these kind of components are things that we sort of do within Farm Urban. And as I said, when we started to be introduced to the construction industry and the built environment and the way in which schemes were being delivered, we started to realise there's an awful lot of synergy and overlap that we wanted to explore. So I suppose that's the sort of social value is just a nice good thing to do, but also what's the commercial reason to think about social value as we're delivering our schemes. So I quite like this definition from the construction line, where they reference the UK Green Building Council, and they categorize social value under three broad themes. So jobs and economic growth, health, well-being, and the environment, and then the strength of a community. But what I particularly like is that they recognize that social value is going to mean different things from one job to the next, depending on the context. So that the location, what's being delivered. So really kind of looking at it through this sort of place-based, location-specific lens, drawing from all those broad principles. But what exactly does this scheme need? So people might be looking for training for local people, new or restored green spaces, or an employment for groups that are underrepresented in the construction industry. So just to highlight that, there's a I suppose a citizen-based way of thinking of social value. It's just a good thing to do, so we should all be doing it. But then there's also more of a commercial angle on this as well, in that, if we can demonstrate, especially to public bodies, that we're really delivering meaningful social value, then it's going to give us that competitive edge and help us secure those contracts. And ultimately, I believe build better schemes. So yeah, why is it important? So there's the commercial side that we've just touched on then, and then maybe diving down a little bit into the detail on that. So what that can look like. So like I said before, it's making sure that your suppliers are aligned with your goals. So a way to future-proof your organization, a way to attract better candidates. So a lot of people now looking for employment, the real talent, they're not just looking for a paycheck, they're looking to work for a company that kind of is a good place to work for. It's got values that align with their own values, and they feel like they're doing good by coming to work. So kind of strengthening relationships within the community that you're working in. So if you can really embed yourself in that community, and people, if rolling off the tongue goes, X organization really delivers effective social value, then that's kind of strengthening that relationship. And then, a way to boost what, previously we've called CSR, which I think there's a lot of parallels with social value. But for your organization to kind of be seen as someone who goes above and beyond, deliver not only effective schemes, but embedding kind of CSR and social value into that. And ultimately, it's going to deliver financial benefits. So there's numerous studies coming out now to say that, if your business has kind of environmental and social aims at its core, then you kind of outperforming other organizations from a financial perspective. And then coming right the way back round, increasing your chance of winning those bids, and demonstrating that you can deliver on the client's social value aims. So yeah, definitely a kind of a commercial benefit to focusing on really meaningful, effective social value. So a bit of scene setting, what social value is, why it's important, and then maybe a little bit around kind of some of our observations, and again, really keen to kind of hear your thoughts on this when we get into the Q&A session. But some of the barriers to delivering impact. So some of the areas we feel that there's barriers is the kind of the models. So whether it's TOMS or HACT or whatever model we're using to evaluate and demonstrate the social value, a lot of the people we're speaking to and kind of in our own hands, when you really start to evidence the value that you've created through the programs that you've delivered, there are limits in the models. I think they're a great starting point and they do help give you those kind of concrete figures and those proxy values. But sometimes there's kind of limitations and you want to do more. But if it's not an NT in the TOMS framework, then why would you do it? And should you do it? And how do you demonstrate that cost and that value add? Budget, we've seen, can kind of restrict the impact that's delivered. So there might be a 10, 12, 20% weighting in the scoring of the bid, but then how much of that is actually translated down into spend to deliver that social value. So again, we're seeing a real range within the industry on what people are kind of prepared to spend, and then what impact that and value for money that gives. Another area that we're seeing constraints is in capacity. So, there might be a large commitment to deliver social value, but it all falls on the shoulders of the social value manager. But they're expected to kind of measure, deliver evidence, win new business. So a lot of kind of pinch points around capacity, which is where we've been able to help. And then time, linked to that, just the time to kind of really prioritize it and get it in there. So it may well be in the initial application, but then how is that kind of delivered throughout the scheme? And then some questions or challenges around the way in which the procurement takes place. Is it enough just to put it in the application? Is it measured and reported in on throughout the delivery of the scheme? And again, seeing a real broad spectrum of how contracts are procured and managed, but then also how organizations are reporting in on them. So lots of questions, more than any kind of real answers there. So keen to discuss that and hear your thoughts and your experience towards the end of this presentation. So yeah, there's kind of some of our thoughts, some of our insights, some of our questions. And what I really wanted to do today is just share, I suppose, the Farm Urban story and how we've been able to partner with organizations within the built environment to kind of deliver on that social impact, and how that's helped us and hopefully helped the organizations we've been working with, but then ultimately how it's helped the people that we're serving. So just flashing back to this, so remembering that was the kind of the reference point, the framing of why we got into this, why we set our business up, and then this broad mission. But clearly, there's big ambitions, and we absolutely can't do it alone. So as I said, about four years ago, we started looking for really strategic partnerships with shared values, aims, and outcomes that we could join forces with to kind of amplify our own impact. And something we really firmly believe in Farm Urban, that is to have lasting impact and bring about systemic change, we've got to take a really integrated, holistic, long-term approach. So we're not about just delivering a project and then disappearing. hopefully you'll see as I go on throughout the presentation, we like to kind of embed ourselves into communities across a broad range of topics and areas, and really deliver that kind of holistic long-term value. And we often talk about creating a movement that the whole community can get behind, because that's how you kind of really deliver value from a long-term perspective. So the farm urban way, kind of just drilling down into that a little bit deeper. So again, holistic, joined up. And we tend to try to embed solutions into the fabric of society at multiple levels. So, making healthy and sustainable choices shouldn't be hard work, but it's all well and good saying that from a position of privilege, when you've got the time and the resources to do that. And even then, it can be difficult sometimes. But there's an awful lot of barriers in the way for an awful lot of people. So fundamentally, it's our job to just practically remove those barriers and make it easier for people to make kind of healthier and more sustainable choices. And we do that in the home, the classroom, the workplace and community setting, and the leisure space. So again, a very broad setting of applications, but we really feel that to kind of have that deep lasting impact, we need to be present in these different locations. So maybe a little bit about kind of how and what we do in those locations. So at the core of what we do is growing food in cities. And the main technology we use is something called vertical farming, which is essentially growing plants in water. So this is one of the vertical farms that we installed in the Baltic Triangle in Liverpool. So it's retrofitted into the old Tate and Lyle sugar warehouse. So it's a Victorian warehouse near the waterfront, with this vaulted brickwork ceiling. So a real challenge of a space, but lends itself really well to kind of this sort of application. So, if you've got difficult, challenging spaces, whether that's basements or rooftops that aren't really fit for people or gyms, actually growing food in that space really does make sense. And they're really kind of thermally well insulated as well. So we're growing about 4,500 different leafy greens in here, salads, herbs, chards, kales, and they get boxed up and distributed to local people. So what is vertical farming and why do it? Well, it's a way to grow fresh produce locally. You guarantee quality, consistency, and availability all year round. If you think about response to climate, how the kind of agricultural industry has really struggled with floods and droughts, and then pile on top of that geopolitical instability, whether it's Brexit or COVID. Traditional farming it faces an awful lot of challenges. So vertical farming is a way to kind of shore up that supply. It also gives kind of hyperlocal sustainable superfood to people who need it most, which is how we improve long-term health outcomes. Diet is the leading cause of improving long-term health outcomes. We can create high-tech, meaningful jobs for local people, deliver green infrastructure, and increase biodiversity in cities. And I think what really sets us apart as an organisation is our community-embedded education programmes, which we deliver from primary to pensioner, so primary schools, secondary schools, and to adults as well. So you're probably familiar with large-scale vertical farms that kind of happen in peri-urban warehouses, which is brilliant, and we fully support that. But what interests us more is how do we embed these systems into the fabric of society? So it might be, huge, wonderful schemes like this one, or it might be kind of smaller schemes or systems that I'll show you a bit later on. So we love turns of phrase and catchphrases at Farm Urban. So we say at Farm Urban, we nurture and we nourish so that people and planet can flourish. And we kind of stuck with that language, and we deliver our education, our outreach programs, and our foods support programs under these kind of umbrellas: nurture, nourish, and flourish. So nurture really takes place in the classroom predominantly, and it's all about educating, inspiring healthy and sustainable behaviours, and improving people's skills. So that's delivered through our Roots and Shoots brand. And we've engaged well over 50,000 pupils now across 45 schools. So we've got national reach, primarily Northwest based, but then over the last couple of years, developed all of our programs so they can be delivered nationally. So just a little snapshot into what these look like. So Future Food Heroes is our primary school program, and it's typically delivered to year 5 pupils. So we'll recruit a whole year group, so whether that's 30, 60, 120 kids, and then in each classroom we'll get one of our little mini vertical farms. We call it the produce pod. So it's just a hack of IKEA recycling bins and plumbing components from Screwfix. But it's a really, really effective way to kind of engage children and teach them about the circular economy. So in this system, down in the bottom tank, there is fish, and in the top tank, there's plants, and the fish waste is fertilizing the plants, and the plants are purifying the water for the fish. So it's a really effective kind of closed loop system that's super engaging for kids. You know, you get them naming the fish and wanting to smell and taste the produce that's growing on the top. And it's a very, very powerful way to kind of nudge them or towards trying things that they haven't before. But we've mapped that to the school curriculum, and there's a full online learning platform to support that. We also put in a little worm farm so that any waste food from the pack lunches can be fed to worms, and they see how the worms are turning that waste food into a valuable product. So that's an organic fertilizer and a liquid pesticide as well, all natural. And then we give them a mushroom growing kit. So they get waste cardboard from all the Amazon deliveries and spent coffee grounds from the staff room, inoculate it with some mycelium spores, spray it with water, and two weeks later they've got these weird and wonderful shiitake mushrooms that are bursting out. And again, they just bite them. These are kids that have maybe never seen a raw mushroom or a salad leaf, never mind kind of tried it. But a lot of barriers are broken down by being involved in the process and taking ownership of it. So that's Future Food Heroes, works really well for year 5 primary schools. And then for secondary schools, we've got our Future Food Challenge program. So it's similar in nature, but it's got more of an enterprise focus on it. So again, they get a little produce pod in the classroom, but we encourage them to form their own startup business, and they have to decide if they're going to be a design engineer, a creative director, or a managing director. And the challenge is you've got to design and build a prototype vertical farming system to support your local community. And then you've got to build a business around it. So we get them using Asana and Slack and doing business models and developing brands and doing market research. Again, this is all supported by an online learning platform. And we have a launch event, usually our headquarters, Farm Urban or closer to where they're based. And then they go off with a £1,000 budget, access to our online shop, and they kind of design and develop this system over the course of a couple of terms. All the wraparound supporting materials they bring back to a Dragon's Den style pitching competition. Usually we do this in partnership with a university. So they come and they present their system and their brand and their business model, and they get interrogated by a panel of judges. So again, great opportunity for kind of partner organizations, sponsors, to come and be involved in that process. So as much or as little as you want, really. So there's opportunities to kind of dial in, to do the online mentorship, to attend the launch events and the finale events, but a really great way for your organization to kind of have a presence, deliver real social value. But Farm Urban are kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting and the day-to-day management and delivery of the program. And then finally, for adults, we've got our community edible wall program. So it's a really, really nice kind of flexible program that usually takes place over 8 weeks. So there's 8 sessions. We're installing a mini vertical farm, but it's not really about the vertical farm. So there's all sorts of softer skills built into that. So whether it's communication, confidence, debating skills, there's the practical skills as well. And we can kind of tailor that program to suit. So we've done a lot of work with people with long-term unemployed, so people with barriers to employment. We've done a lot of work with local charity, the Brain Charity. So that's working with people with neurological conditions. So it's a really kind of great flexible program to engage adults, improve skills, encourage people back into the workplace. So a lot of people who've been through this program, we've offered supported employment placements at Farm Urban, and then either employed them on a long-term contract or supported them back into employment in whatever area that they're interested in. So the end result is a small system gets installed into a community cafe. So we won't drill down into the feedback too much, but just to say that as a social enterprise, we have, as well as our financial accounting, kind of social accounting. So everything we do, every program we deliver, the social impact is and the environmental impact is measured and quantified using the HACT or the TOMS framework, and more recently some other frameworks, so we can kind of really evidence that impact. And our impact lead, Abby, she's just completed their PhD on this topic, so I'd argue there's no one who knows more around how you can use urban farming to kind of deliver social and environmental impact and really evidence and kind of demonstrate that value. So that's nurture. So it's all around education, skills, primary to pensioner, kind of primary schools, secondary schools, and adults. And then nourish, this is more around kind of feeding people and the whole food poverty piece and food insecurity and getting this really high quality fresh produce to everyone. But we've hopefully found a way to give equal access to this really, really nutritious produce. So that's delivered through our Greens for Good brand. And the core product is boxes of living greens. So these are grown in our vertical farm. They're harvested, but they still have the roots on. So you get maximum flavor, maximum freshness, and should be zero waste because it's not turned into brown mush in the bottom of a plastic bag like so much of the packet salad that we buy does. So it's a really, really cool product. This is what we sell to paying customers, but there's also the same product that we donate to local food pantries and food banks. So just an example of some of the kind of paying customers and some of the beneficiaries that we support. So most of the produce is delivered by cargo bike or electronic vehicle. So again, really trying to reduce that kind of carbon footprint on the delivery as well. Zero plastics, all cardboard, reusable, and ultimately compostable packaging. So that works really well. If there's a local community that you're working in that you want to kind of support and provide this fresh produce to. But similarly, Nourish works well in the workplace. So again, delivered through Greens for Good. We install our mini vertical farms that we call edible walls into kind of reception areas or in corporate canteens. And the idea here is it's a healthy, sustainable equivalent of a vending machine. So instead of being filled with crisps and chocolate and sugar water, there's living produce. So whether it's herbs, edible flowers, salad varieties, and people in the workplace or visitors can just come and help themselves to produce, whether it's a few leaves or take the whole head. And then they can enjoy that in work or take it home to enjoy with their families. And so we found, again, this is a really effective way to kind of engage people. It's a bit of a talking point, and it's a gateway in to opening up those conversations around healthier and more sustainable habits. So as well as the wall itself, we have a wraparound SLA where we come in and maintain that. So you're not on your own. We make sure it's looking good all the time. And then we can build out staff and community engagement around that. So we have kind of lunch and learn similar to this. So in person kind of seminars, cookery demonstrations, workshops, practical sessions, all based around kind of the edible wall vertical farming, but reaching out into lots of different areas of social value, but with that kind of vertical farming piece at the core. And it's a great way, again, so if we're working with an organization and we're installing an edible wall into the business, we'll really strongly encourage that as part of that, they kind of give back to the local community. So this is how we're able to pay for the boxes of greens that we're donating to local people, is through the partnerships with businesses. So again, that's the same high quality product. So, it's not cheap to grow food this way. I'm right from the start. Jens, the co-founder, and I've been very committed to making sure that we find a way to give equal access. It's not about giving people in food banks and food pantries the leftovers, or it's about giving them exactly the same high quality product. And then finally, just to kind of introduce you to a concept that we're working on called the Urban Oasis, which is a large scheme, and it's been developed really with everything that we've delivered over the last 10 years, but kind of co-locating that into one space. So this particular example is developed for a multi-story car park. So it's a way to think about the use of rooftops. They're often underutilized spaces on car parks, but equally this would work on a department store or any large building. And we have the vertical farming on the left-hand side. We've got some outdoor urban growing along the back, some polytunnels, an art and exhibition space called the Cube, and then a series of maker spaces, so we can engage local people and they can have a presence there selling whatever they're making or working on. And then in the center we have the food offer, so it's an F&B offer open to the public, kind of more of an experiential destination where people can kind of come and experience health, sustainability, and then buy some produce as well. So yeah, happy to kind of leave it there in terms of the presentation from me. But as I said, I really want to kind of hear your thoughts, get into some conversation around your experiences on social value, some of the pain points, the difficulties, the opportunities, and then if there's anything, if we run out of time here today, just myself and Neil's email addresses are on there. Feel free to reach out and get in touch anytime.
First of all, I'd say a massive thank you. That was really interesting. We've just got Neil on as well. If you'd like to put your camera on or anything, also can sort of take part in the sort of questions. But I think we've got our first one from Jack Wycherley. So I will just give you access to a mic, Jack, and then you can ask away. There you go. If you just want to unmute now, you should be able to speak.
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All good.
Great presentation. Especially for a Monday. You need some inspiration. You need some inspiration for a Monday. But no, I loved that. And the thing that you said right at the start is you can get caught up in the individual measures. Obviously, we report through compliance chain, and it's about, I like the different pillars that you split them into and the different names that you called them. So you're still measuring all in the same way to look at the social value add, especially with what we could do. But it's about finding something that's close to like the company's values and heart, and having a little bit more direction. We tend to kind of do the classic stuff. We'll go to careers fairs, and you're talking about we're a small to medium enterprise building affordable homes, and you're telling them all about the construction industry and how to get into it and examples of projects that you've done. But sometimes you feel like there's a real lack of purpose of why you're there and what they've really taken away, and inspiring that next generation. So not only is it giving me food for thought about coming up with very specific sort of company ways in which we could target those to have the measures all coming into, but how did you sort of first come up with those ideas? Was it like sort of a strategy where you got ideas and then you focused on a particular few pillars of what you could do, or did it come naturally?
Yeah, more naturally, to be honest, Jack. I think so my background's science, and I kind of left science to get into when I was doing drug development for the US government, and it just felt very at odds with actually we need to be changing things from the ground up, like improving access to these things. So health was at the core, and then nutrition just became like that. I think it is the most important thing. And from there, like what people are eating, it's such a great leveler, and it's such a great. It doesn't matter, what you culturally, what race you are, what age you are, what gender you are. Like everyone eats, and it's just a great place to start a conversation. And then from there, we've kind of built it out, and then it's like really techie what we do, but you don't lead with this is super high tech. You kind of lead with the food and the sustainability, and especially young people. Like so, we've got the head of the engineering school on our board, and he often says, if I could change the name of mechanical engineering to sustainable engineering, in terms of bringing in more females, I'd have much more females on the course, and I'd have a better quality candidate. And I think young people especially are so open and wanting to do more, like you say, around health, well-being, sustainability.
Yeah.
So kind of leading with that, and you almost then you kind of bring in the engineering and the construction and the opportunities, but you've just created a very open, engaged group of people. And then when you bring in the things that you're talking about, you've been sort of unified by like a common purpose, and then the other stuff is much easier you're not selling it, but to kind of engage them with and demonstrate, and like those kind of harder metrics and pathways you kind of bring in then. I don't know if that
Totally.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because I think sometimes you sort of get caught up in this, it's construction and the things that you take to show them at the careers fairs, and it's, like building miniature timber frame houses. So it's very hands-on, but actually, like, are you sort of contributing to those sort of problems earlier on? And actually, there's lots of our sites that I think could benefit from. We do a lot with green space. But I think there's more that we could be doing with that. So it might even change the conversations that we're having maybe with clients about what the green space is used for. And rather than it be, planting trees and making sure that we have a green way of building, actually, are we even thinking about the community and things like vegetable plots and, could they potentially be doing that on their sites as well, something a little bit more different? So it's been an inspiring last 35 minutes, I must admit. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, mate. Thanks.
Cheers, Jack.
Does anyone else have any questions? Stunned them into silence, I think, Paul.
Yeah. No. Well, maybe if I posed a question,
Yeah.
could anyone share sort of their experiences around any barriers or success stories or examples of social value that they've kind of delivered? Because I'm conscious we're coming at this from a certain perspective with a certain set of solutions, and we often talk about being a social value sidekick, and any social value problem or opportunity we can help you solve, hopefully. But really interested to hear what other practitioners have experienced, and any kind of barriers that they feel are in their way, or any great examples of projects they've worked on.
There you go, Phoebe. Should be able to come on now.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was a really great presentation. Thank you, Paul. I'm from the Southwest, so we have lots of lovely green space. And one of the things that I'm quite passionate about is sort of working with community farms and things like that. And it's really cool to see how flexible your approaches in terms of like in more built environments. But I guess one of the things that we've really enjoyed in a similar sort of vein is working with community farms. Like there's a great one in Weymouth, shout out Weymouth, called Tumbledown Community Farm, where we helped restore one of their paths right up. Like it wasn't a massive project, but it was just quite a simple one, which enabled all of their SEND students and that come and use the space and the people with mobility issues to be able to access the green space, learn about growing their own food and things like that. So helping them sort of enable what they do there. So kind of in a more green space environment, but similar sort of aims. So yeah, really cool to see some other examples of how it's being done in more built up areas.
Nice, thanks, Phoebe. And is that kind of an ongoing program that you run, or yeah? And how have you found that relationship with those farms? Have you've been able to go back to them for different projects and build that relationship? Yeah.
So we've got a nice long local project which helps. You know, we can do things a bit longer term. But the main sort of ongoing thing that we've got with them is that we work with all the schools that use the farm as well. So whether that be the SEND college or the local primary schools and things like that, we can work with them in like their careers outreach as well. So even if it's, you know, a bit wet and windy outside and not very nice, we can still go in and talk to the schools about, you know, growing your own food, but also the project that we're doing at the hospital, which helps. It's kind of health linked as well. So there's loads of things loads of cross themes, I guess, that you can talk about connected to the community farm. Yeah, so a cool example, hopefully.
Thanks, Phoebe.
Christine, I think I saw your hand pop up. So if you've got any questions to ask, or sort of if you've got any input you'd like to share, then feel free. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Thanks, Mel. There we go.
I'm really sorry, I put my hands up by accident.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry about that.
No worries. If there's sort of that's everyone else's all questions answered, everyone else is sort of happy. I'm happy to sort of wrap this one up if you are as well.
Jack, I was just wondering, Paul, are you able to share the slides or any of the content?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Happy to share the slides. And then, as I said, if there's any specific questions that come up after the fact, just give myself or Neil an email if there's specific things you want to talk through. We're really happy to chat.
Yeah, that'd be great, because we're at the moment sort of shaping our sustainability plan. You know, obviously we have a policy in place, but we've recently got a group of individuals who've kind of put themselves forward in the business that want to drive it forward. So this feels like it's fallen into, when I saw this arranged, I thought it's sort of perfect timing, really. And whilst it's fresh, it'd be good to see the slides and to just bring some of those, you know, ideas and inspiration forward to the group.
Yeah, sure. And we've got some video content as well I can share with you, and then kind
That'd
of
be ace.
Specific process of practicalities on the different programs and the different offers. So we've tried to sort of position it so there's a real broad scale, from an individual box can be donated, you know, and there's kind of education programs, you can build those up just on a school by school basis. So there should be something in there for any kind of project budget.
Yeah, that'd be fab. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Paul, for coming on. This has been really, really interesting. Thanks everyone for attending as well. I'm not sure if Neil's still here, but huge thanks to Neil as well for sort of, helping facilitate this whole thing. I'll make sure everyone gets the copies of like like I said, we've recorded all this, so you'll all have like an email with a full sort of copy of the stream. Again, Paul and Neil's emails are both in there, so please do sort of reach out to them because, as you can see, they're offer so much. But I'll leave everyone to enjoy their lunch break.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.